Got a couple of short videos for you on this wonderfully cold Saturday morning. It's going to be, I'm doing this tonight, Friday night, this video. 37 degrees in Florida. I'm not talking about way up north Florida. Central, actually western side, central western Florida. 37 degrees tonight. Well, about right again. Crazy cold weather for freaking end of December, Florida, in case you're wondering. But back on that bank I keep talking about, Italy, Monte Paschi. The people are fleeing. Their deposits are still fleeing. And what was supposed to be $5 billion is now more than that. And there's something like, they're gonna issue $15 billion in debt or through bonds. As if the people all of a sudden are going to want to, the government bailed them out, let's get back and invest in that. Maybe they will. Maybe the sheeple will do that. I really don't know. But anyway, so Italy's insolvent Monte Paschi Bank to issue 15 billion euros in debt. For a glimpse into just how insane modern finance and capital markets are, look no further than Italy's thrice insolvent, in 3 years by the way, bank, Monte Paschi. This is of course an article from Zero Hedge, which after failing to finalize a private deal, remember they were trying to raise $5 billion, is finalizing the terms of its nationalization with the Italian government. A rescue which will cost, you guessed it, Italian taxpayers at least, minimally, 6.6 billion euros and likely more. The bailout, however, is not the punchline. What is that according to Reuters, Monte Paschi, which has yet to be bailed out, which again looks like it's certainly in the works, plans to issue no less than 15 billion euros of debt next year to, quote, restore liquidity and boost investor confidence. Could you imagine watching a big ship, sink, and it goes all the way underwater? And you're thinking to yourself, well, the water's inside. Oh my God, everything's destroyed now. Everything's completely, this is a total, waste of a ship now. And they resurrect it. They put these gigantic floats underwater, pump them up, like some of these, recoveries, and then float the thing back up to the surface. Now this here's a ship. Who wants to get in on this? Who wants to start going on the next vacation, this baby? Excuse me, didn't that ship just sink? It's fine though. Government bailed it out, put the floats on there and floated it back up. It's fine. Nah, I think I'll keep my money in precious metals if you don't mind. Thanks. I mean, this is what we're talking about, except this is a bank. And again, I have to remind you, this, to my knowledge, this bank has never needed a bailout ever. And it's been around for, yes, hundreds of years. I think that its inception was like 1400 or something like that. The year 1400 and something. And it now needs a bailout. But hey, everything's going to be fine. Trump's going to come in and drain the swamp and fix America. And somehow that's going to go over to our buddies in the EU zone and magically fix their problems. No. You can't wish away these problems. You can't print money away these problems, okay? According to Daily La Repubblica, Monte Paschi would issue the debt in the form of bonds and commercial paper. A third of that debt would have a short-term maturity date, while the rest would mature in 3 years, it added. The bank could not immediately be reached for comment. In other words, when the bank was on its own, without the explicit backing of the government, and certainly not the European Central Bank, which confirmed that Monte Paschi's deposit flight was greater than expected, no investor would touch it with a 10-foot pole. However, once the bank has the full backing of the Italian nation, which will own at least 75% of the common equity after the bank is nationalized, there's a line of people waiting to hand over other people's money to the bank to generate a modest return in those bonds. Yeah, okay. Reuters confirms as much, stating that the debt sales would be supported by government guarantees. So there we go. We're going to guarantee this debt. The government, we are backing the bonds of this bank because essentially we own 75% of it at least. And again, we don't know how much they're going to own. That said, might be between 50 to 70%. Remember that? I told you that the other day. It's already saying it's going to be at least 75%, as I also said. 70%, sure, it's going to have to be higher than that ultimately. So now we're hearing it's going to be at least 75%. Reuters confirms as much, stating that the debt sales would be supported by government guarantees, which form part of a liquidity scheme for banks in need, which the European Commission has agreed to extend for 6 months. Of course, by providing the insolvent bank this blanket guarantee, the Commission would once again be violating one of its core principles. Under EU state aid rules, banks with a capital shortfall cannot benefit from general liquidity support schemes, meaning the Commission takes decisions on a case-by-case basis, as it did for Monte Paschi, which may be insolvent, but it is systemically important, as they say, so anything goes. Monte Paschi, Italy's third biggest lender and the world's oldest, had to ask Rome for help after failing to win investors' backing for a share issue meant to keep it afloat. As a reminder, on Monday, the European Central Bank revised the size of the bank's capital shortfall by 76% higher and estimated its funding needs not at 5 billion like it used to, 8.8 billion euros, again compared with a 5 billion euro gap previously indicated by the bank. This led to a greater taxpayer contribution for the bailout and an angry reaction from Italy's economy minister Pier Carlo Padoan. The Treasury may have to put up around 6.6 billion euros to salvage the lender, including 2 billion euros to compensate around 40,000 retail bondholders, the Bank of Italy said on Thursday, while the rest will come from the forced conversion of the bank's subordinated bonds into shares. Should the bank run continue or accelerate, the bank's funding needs and thus taxpayer inflows are only set to increase. So rather than tell these 40,000 quote-unquote retail bondholders you made a bad investment, you ever see those commercials, little terms and conditions, call so-and-so investment firm, little fine print at the bottom, and sometimes they'll actually read it. Investments requires money, substantial time risk is going to be involved, yada, 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 risk is involved. In other words, you risk losing your money. That's typical on any investment, right? Okay, so why do 40,000 retail bondholders for the bank get bailed out? Don't they immediately take the haircut and say, okay, what do we have left? Now that's what we're going to bail you out with, even though they shouldn't be bailing out the bank at all. Nope. You want to know why? Because I got a sneaky suspicion most of the 40,000 retail bondholders are the club. And as I told you, and you've seen, the club does not take no for an answer. The club does not get defaulted bonds on itself. The club gets bailed out. So the bondholders get bailed out by the bank getting bailed out. So two entities, same club, both bailed out. Take care. One more video to do.